Did you know that if you own just 0.01 Bitcoin, you own more Bitcoin than 99.94% of the entire world? It sounds insane, but it's true. Because right now, less than 1% of the world owns any Bitcoin at all. The rest are still trapped in a system built on paper promises, losing value every single year. This means owning even just a fraction of a Bitcoin puts you ahead of nearly every person on the planet. In this video, we're breaking down the 7 levels of Bitcoin wealth, from owning absolutely nothing to holding thousands of Bitcoin like Michael Saylor. You'll see exactly where you rank, how rare your stack really is, and why even 0.01 Bitcoin can make you statistically richer than 99.96% of the world. Because the deeper you go, the rarer it gets, and by the time most people realize what they missed, the supply will already be gone. Welcome to the Bitcoin Wealth Ladder. Let's see where you stand, and before we jump into it, just a quick reminder, only a small percentage of you watching are actually subscribed. If you're getting value from the videos, hit that subscribe button. It's free, it supports the channel, and you can always change your mind later. Now, let's begin. Out of more than 8 billion people on Earth, over 99.96% own 0 Bitcoin. That's roughly 8 billion individuals completely outside the Bitcoin network with no keys, no wallets, no stake in the hardest money ever created. They live in a system where inflation quietly taxes savings, where currencies are printed without limit, and where the average person still believes digital scarcity is just an internet fad. In truth, owning nothing means staying fully exposed to a system designed to lose value over time. If you're in this group, you are part of the overwhelming global majority, but also the group most at risk when the old system buckles. Since Bitcoin's fixed supply is capped at 21 million, every year that passes shrinks the chance to ever enter meaningfully. More than 19.6 million have already been mined, and an estimated 3 million are lost forever. That leaves around 16.6 million usable coins, but only 2.4 million actually trade on exchanges. For the rest of the world, that's a rounding error against the human population. Divide the real circulating supply equally among everyone alive, and each person would get just 0.002 Bitcoin, about 200,000 Satoshis. So anyone with even a fraction more than that is already above global average. Most people here haven't rejected Bitcoin out of conviction. They've simply never looked closely. They hear the headlines, they see the price volatility, they assume it's too late or too complicated, but history suggests the opposite. Every major monetary transition starts this way, with near total disbelief from the crowd and quiet conviction from the few paying attention. For now, those with 0 Bitcoin still live in a fiat world running on printed promises. But the longer they stay here, the harder the climb becomes. Because once the majority finally moves to understand what they missed, the math of scarcity won't care. The supply will already be gone. Owning just 0.01 Bitcoin places you in one of the rarest positions on Earth. At today's prices, that's roughly $1,000 worth of Bitcoin, but statistically, it's a number that separates you from 99.96% of the global population. Out of 8 billion people, only about 0.04% hold that much or more. To put that into perspective, it's rarer than being a millionaire, rarer than owning beachfront property or having a piece of fine art in your home. That's how scarce true digital ownership has become. The reason is simple math. With only 21 million Bitcoin that will ever exist and 16.6 million effectively circulating, there isn't enough for everyone. If the total supply were divided evenly across humanity, each person would get just 0.002 Bitcoin. That means holding 0.01 Bitcoin makes you 5 times wealthier than the global average in Bitcoin terms. And because at least 3 million Bitcoin are permanently lost, that rarity increases every year. Bitcoin isn't just hard to find, it's vanishing in real time as old wallets disappear and long-term holders refuse to sell. For many people, this level feels small, but it's the beginning of financial sovereignty. At 0.01 Bitcoin, you're not speculating, you're participating. You've crossed the line between watching the system change and owning a piece of the new one. That tiny fraction represents direct access to an open, borderless network that no government can inflate away or confiscate without your keys. Think of it this way. The average person spends more on a smartphone than what it costs to enter this tier. Yet one decays in value the moment you buy it, while the other is mathematically programmed to get scarcer every 4 years through halving cycles. When future demand collides with a fixed and shrinking supply, small stacks like 0.01 Bitcoin could carry weight far beyond what most imagine today. You're no longer outside the system. You've stepped onto the lowest rung of true digital wealth, and for now, the door to entry is still open, but not for long. Owning 0.1 Bitcoin puts you in an entirely different class of holder. It may not sound like much, but in a world where the average person owns nothing, having a tenth of a Bitcoin makes you statistically elite. Only a fraction of wallets ever reach this level. Roughly 10 million wallets worldwide hold at least that much, representing far less than 0.2% of the global population. If Bitcoin adoption froze today, this group would already be as rare as the top 10% of wealth holders in most developed nations. With 0.1 Bitcoin, you've secured a position in the financial equivalent of business class. You're no longer watching Bitcoin from the sidelines. You're part of the minority with a measurable stake in the hardest asset on Earth. At this level, what you hold is equivalent to owning a few blocks of prime digital real estate in a city that keeps expanding while the land itself never increases. Every halving makes your 0.1 Bitcoin relatively scarcer. Every year of lost or burned coins amplifies your share of the remaining pie. Even among Bitcoin believers, few realize how significant this level truly is. If Bitcoin were divided equally among all 8 billion people, it would take 50 global averages combined to match what you hold. It means you've already outpaced entire nations in terms of per capita Bitcoin ownership. When Bitcoin adoption doubles or triples, those trying to reach your level will find the cost rising faster than they can save. This stage also marks a psychological shift. You begin to view Bitcoin not as a trade, but as savings. You start thinking in satoshis, not dollars. You care less about the daily price and more about the long arc of scarcity. History rewards people who accumulate rare assets before the world agrees they are valuable. And if Bitcoin continues along its projected trajectory of institutional adoption and fixed emission, 0.1 Bitcoin could one day represent the kind of financial standing that today requires years of traditional investing. You're now part of the early elite, and your advantage is measured in time, not luck. Before we continue, if you want to stay ahead of these signals and know exactly when the market's heating up or when it's giving you those rare buying windows, I break it down every day in the Crypto Nutshell, my free 5-minute daily crypto newsletter. It's built to give you quick, actionable insights so you can make smarter decisions without spending hours buried in charts or headlines. You'll get clear signals on when to buy, when to take profits, and the latest news that could move markets, all delivered straight to your inbox. Just click the first link in the description, enter your email, and you're in. Now, back to the video. Crossing the 1 Bitcoin mark is a defining moment. At this level, you've entered one of the most exclusive financial clubs on Earth. Out of more than 8 billion people, fewer than 1 million individuals are estimated to own a full Bitcoin. That's less than 0.012% of humanity, meaning you are statistically rarer than a millionaire in dollar terms. In a future where Bitcoin becomes the dominant form of global reserve value, owning just one could place you among the digital aristocracy. To understand how scarce 1 Bitcoin truly is, imagine the supply distributed equally. There are only 21 million Bitcoin that will ever exist. Even if every coin were intact, which they aren't, there still wouldn't be enough for every millionaire on Earth to own one. And since at least 3 million Bitcoin are lost forever, the real number is closer to 18 million or fewer. At 1 Bitcoin, you control more than 500 times the global per-person average. At this level, your position in the network is no longer symbolic. 1 Bitcoin represents a meaningful slice of monetary sovereignty. It's an amount that can change lives, fund retirements, or preserve entire families' wealth across generations. Many early Bitcoin adopters built their fortunes right here, not by trading, but by simply holding through years of volatility while the rest of the world hesitated. You also join the historical class of early digital millionaires. Small in number, often underestimated, but far ahead of the curve. When Bitcoin first traded under $1, this was pocket change. Today, it's a global status marker. When institutions begin to accumulate Bitcoin as a treasury asset, the competition for whole coins becomes extreme. Each halving tightens supply, each ETF inflow drains liquidity, and each new wave of adoption pushes the 1 Bitcoin mark further out of reach for average earners. Owning 1 Bitcoin doesn't just put you ahead of 99.99% of the world. It aligns you with the next generation of capital owners, the ones who recognize that the rarest asset isn't physical, but digital, borderless, and finite. You've reached the level most will never touch, and time itself is now on your side. Owning 10 Bitcoin is the point where wealth transforms from personal to generational. You're no longer a participant in the digital economy, you've become a cornerstone of it. Fewer than 150,000 wallets in existence hold 10 or more Bitcoin, and that figure includes exchanges and institutional custodians managing funds for thousands of users. In truth, the number of real people who hold 10 full Bitcoin privately is likely under 50,000 worldwide. That's less than 0.0006% of the global population, a level of rarity comparable to owning a private island. At this level, you've achieved the digital version of financial independence. In 2025 prices, your stack is worth more than $1 million, but its real value lies beyond fiat conversion. You own an asset that operates outside of any central bank, beyond any government's printing press, and protected by the most secure computer network ever built. 10 Bitcoin is not just wealth, it's power stored in math. This is the tier where conviction separates holders from speculators. Anyone can buy 0.01 Bitcoin. Few can accumulate 10 without understanding what Bitcoin actually represents. Holders at this level tend to think in decades. They measure value in purchasing power, not price charts. They recognize that if governments and corporations continue to absorb Bitcoin as a treasury reserve, 10 coins will one day carry the influence of an entire fortune. Many early adopters stopped right here. They reached double digits, went quiet, and disappeared into cold storage. They understood that the path beyond 10 is steep and liquidity is drying up fast. Out of the 16.6 million Bitcoin left in circulation, over 70% haven't moved in more than a year. The real free float is shrinking with each halving. Owning 10 Bitcoin today is like holding 10,000 ounces of gold before the creation of central banks. It's a level of independence most people will never experience. At this stage, you are no longer protecting yourself from inflation, you're protecting your bloodline from economic decay. Few will reach this level, but those who do will shape the new era of digital wealth for generations to come. Reaching 100 Bitcoin is crossing into a financial realm almost no one ever will. You are now among the digital dynasties, the ultra-rare holders whose wealth rivals that of small institutions. On-chain data from 2025 shows that only about 14,000 wallets contain 100 Bitcoin or more, and that includes cold storage vaults belonging to major exchanges. Strip those out, and the true number of individuals with this much Bitcoin is likely under 5,000 worldwide, or about 0.00006% of humanity. At this level, you aren't just early, you're legendary. Owning 100 Bitcoin makes you the equivalent of a high net worth institution in the Bitcoin ecosystem. You have influence, liquidity, and leverage that few can match. At mid-2025 prices, your holdings are worth roughly $10 million, but that fiat number misses the point. You're sitting on 100 units of the hardest monetary energy ever discovered. You have the ability to transmit generational wealth across borders with a single digital signature. This level has historically been home to the earliest miners, the most disciplined accumulators, and the few who had the foresight to stack when everyone else was mocking the idea. Many of the wallets in this tier have been dormant for years because their owners understand that moving too soon is a mistake. They are not traders. They are vault builders. They recognize that 100 Bitcoin in a world of shrinking supply and accelerating institutional demand is irreplaceable. This is also the level where your decisions echo. A single transaction from a 100 Bitcoin wallet can influence markets, trigger headlines, or shift liquidity flows on exchanges. That's the kind of visibility that comes with being in the top few thousand holders on Earth. Every cycle that passes, new participants enter the market believing they can climb to this tier, yet each year the ladder grows shorter. If you've reached 100 Bitcoin, you've essentially exited the traditional system. You are now part of the new financial nobility, a decentralized dynasty whose fortune is secured not by banks or governments, but by code, computation, and time. What you hold is more than wealth. It's history written in digital scarcity. At 1,000 Bitcoin, you are no longer just wealthy, you are part of an entirely different order. This is a level of sovereign individuals, a financial class so small that it barely registers on global charts. According to 2025 data, there are roughly 1,300 wallets holding 1,000 Bitcoin or more. But once exchange and custodial wallets are excluded, the number of actual people who privately hold this amount is likely under 500 worldwide. That's about 0.00006% of humanity, a level of concentration that makes even billionaires look common by comparison. This is the realm of people like Michael Saylor, the Winklevoss twins, and a handful of early miners and developers who secured their positions long before the rest of the world understood what they were building. At 1,000 Bitcoin, your influence extends far beyond price charts. You can shape liquidity cycles, fund major infrastructure, and affect adoption simply by choosing where to allocate your holdings. You've effectively achieved digital sovereignty, the ability to operate above the control of any central bank or financial institution. Each coin at this level represents a slice of the 21 million that will ever exist. If every government, corporation, and citizen decided to adopt Bitcoin, your 1,000 Bitcoin would equal an empire of purchasing power. It's the equivalent of owning 0.005% of the entire Bitcoin supply, a figure so scarce that no amount of fiat printing can replicate it. You control a measurable share of global monetary energy. Most people can't even imagine reaching this point because it's not just a matter of wealth, it's timing, conviction, and unwavering belief. Holders here saw Bitcoin before it became a headline. They accumulated when liquidity was thin and faith was rare. Many of them will never sell because they understand what comes next. When nations begin competing for Bitcoin reserves, when ETFs and sovereign funds lock coins into deep cold storage, liquidity at this level will vanish permanently. To hold 1,000 Bitcoin in 2025 is to hold an unrepeatable position in human financial history. You are untouchable, insulated from monetary decay, and part of the smallest economic elite ever to exist. The rest of the world is still figuring out what Bitcoin means. You already own enough of it to shape that answer. Anyway, guys, that's all we have for today. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video.